You look over as Nick enters the tavern. You two have been adventuring together for a really long time and are great friends. What you saw in that cave, though, today, that can't happen again. You saw the looks on the other party members' faces. If this isn't addressed, this could tear you guys apart. So, with a little bit of anxiety, you walk up to him and go, "Hey, buddy, we need to talk." Hi there, I'm Dr. Megan Connell, and this is Psychology at the Table. In this episode, we're going to be talking about how to have difficult conversations with your players. Now, in pretty much every video I've done, I've talked to you about the importance of addressing problems directly with your players. And while that's all well and good, how do you go about talking about difficult things? How do you even broach this topic with people? Talking with people about uncomfortable topics, whether it be their bad behaviors, difficulties you're having with them, or a change you fear they're not going to like, it's a skill set and it's a difficult thing to learn. In this video, I want to give you some tools and techniques that will hopefully help you have these types of conversations with your players. And again, as I said, this is a skill. So like any skill, the more you practice it, the better you get at it. And while in your early career as a GM, these might be very difficult for you to have, hopefully as you go along and as you mature as a GM, it's going to become easier and easier for you to have these types of conversations. So we're going to break down the phrasing and how to talk about difficult topics into 3 stages: preparation, planning, and execution. So when we're talking about preparing for the conversation, we have 2 main objectives here. One, we want to identify the problem, and the other is we want to start thinking about the behavioral changes we want to see as a result of our conversation. So when you're preparing for the conversation, think about what the problem is. Now, it might be really tempting to gloss over this step, thinking like, I know what the problem is, it's X. But really, it's not a bad idea to take some time and really drill down into what the problem is and to think about it from a few different angles. Either write it out or talk about it with an impartial third party. I'm actually a really big fan of taking a technique from Lean Six Sigma where you ask the question why 6 times. So if you have a problem like your players are distracted during combat, ask yourself, why is that a problem 6 times? Doing so and answering that will really help give you some more insight into the nature of the problem and start giving you ideas of possible solutions. And once you have that clear idea of the problem, start thinking about the changes you want to see as a result of the conversation you're going to have with your player. You don't have to have the answer, but having a clear idea of what you want to see different is going to help in shaping the conversation and shaping how you talk to your player about it. So once you understand the problem and you have an idea of what you want to see different, it's time to plan the conversation. Now, we plan out what we're going to say for a few reasons. One of the big ones, we want it to be quick and concise, not a lecture, and we don't want it to descend into an argument. If your player shuts down because the message is too long or vague, or they become defensive and start arguing with you, you're likely not going to see them change as a result of talking with them. So if you want to decrease defensiveness, one method that you can use is to use a technique of phrasing called the I message. No, not the app on your phone. This is actually a way to phrase concerns that will help people hear the message and not feel attacked when you're talking to them. We use the I statement because when we use phrasing such as whenever you, that automatically makes the person feel defensive, and they're very likely going to start defending themselves and go, oh, well, I only do that because you, and then we're in a back and forth argument. So rather than using that whenever you phrasing, we use an I phrasing. So we start by saying things like, I want to run a game where, or I feel frustrated about. Starting our phrasing that way can help the player hear our concerns and not feel defensive or argumentative. And to further ensure your players don't get defensive when you're talking with them, try writing out what you plan on saying, and then either reading it or having an impartial third party read it back to you. And as you're hearing it or as you're reading it, ask yourself, at any time during this, did I feel the need to defend myself? If the answer is yes, you probably need to rework on your phrasing again. Once your message is clear, you really want to make it concise. Ideally, you would like this only to be a couple of sentences, and in those few sentences, your player should be able to walk away knowing what the concern is, why it's a concern, why you're talking to them about it, and what you want to see change. You don't want them to walk away from that conversation going, God, I have no idea what they were talking about. I feel really confused and bewildered why they were even talking to me. It's also okay to memorize your talking points. In fact, if you're new at trying to have these types of conversations with your players, I would really encourage you to memorize them because that will help ensure you don't forget things, especially if you get nervous during your talk. Now that you know what the problem is, have your phrasing down, and understand what the possible solutions are, it's time to have the conversation, to move into that execution phase. And here's where procrastination can come in. You can have a date in mind that you're going to talk to the player, and then that date comes and you go, doesn't seem like he's in the mood for feedback today, or, she's had a rough one, I don't feel like bringing her down anymore. If you wait for the right time to have a conversation like this, you're never going to have it. So you just have to pick a date and have the conversation. Keep in mind, the sooner you talk to the person about the problem, the easier it is to talk about. Also, if you're nervous when you're sitting down at the conversation or you're worried about it being awkward, go ahead and say so. Saying like, this might be an awkward conversation, or I'm feeling a little nervous talking to you about this. We can sometimes get in our own way by saying we shouldn't be nervous, or we should just be calm and confident. And while that would be wonderful if we could be that way at all times, sometimes we're just not. And it can do a lot just to own up in that moment to say, yeah, I'm a little nervous right now. Recall too, conversation, not a lecture. I know I've said that a few times, but this is really important. We want to say our piece, and then we want to listen to what our players have to say. Ideally, we would love to work together to figure out a solution to the problem, because maybe your player has some insights that you hadn't thought of when you were doing your planning phase. And so talk to them, work with them to find a solution, and then revisit that solution in a few weeks. And this is really important. If you pick a day to follow up with your player on a solution that you guys have come up with, follow up. If you say we're going to follow up in 3 games and you fail to do so, that communicates a lot to your players about how dedicated you really are to making changes around the table. And again, following up doesn't have to be any more complicated than being like, hey, Joe, that thing we talked about, is it working? Yeah. All right, cool. That's all it has to be. It doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out conversation. But do follow up if you say that you're going to. All right, well, that's the episode on having a talk with your players. I hope this was helpful to you. If you have further questions or discussion points, please leave comments below. And as always, let's make space at the table for everyone.